Well, great to be with you today, Victory Singapore. And I want to thank Pastor Jeremy and Carissa for inviting me to be able to speak with you today in this season that there's no other way you can say it other than to say that isn't it strange times in which we live? This has probably been the most strange year that we've ever had in the history of my life, but in recent history. But you know, it hasn't taken God by surprise. And so today I want to talk to you on the thought of it's a new day. Church, I want you to be that to be your declaration. I want you to dare to believe that God is wanting to do something in and through you in this season. You know, a few years ago, in fact, about 20 years ago, so some years ago now, my wife and I planted a church, and we planted a church in a suburban area, similar to maybe like a Tampines type of place. And we were there, and we decided to plant this church. And when we planted it, we actually sold our house from where we were living in a totally different area, a long way away. And we came because we wanted to move into the area, live in the area, and be connected to the people where we were planting this church. So we sold our house and we started our church. Now, in those days, we started our church, and in the first 12 months, planted it with no people and begun. We believed and we trust God. We had what's now seemingly like old-fashioned faith. We stepped out, no income, but believing that God would come through for us. So we decided that we would build a house in the area, and we thought, God, we want to build something that's really nice, that can entertain, that can look after people, not just, just the smallest thing that we could get, but we were full of faith. But the problem was that to actually establish what we needed to do, obviously we went to the bank to borrow some of the money. I'd sold my other house, and we actually had a sizable deposit. And so I sat with the bank manager that I'd worked with for many years, and I sat down and I said, this is what we're looking to do. Here's our deposit. And he goes, good. And he's ticking the boxes. All those in banking understand what I mean. And then we came to the how do you earn your income and how long have you worked for your employer? Now, at that moment, I had to say to him, well, number one, I haven't even started working with my employer. And number two, I'm living by faith. Now, who knows that when you're speaking to a banker, talking about living by faith doesn't quite translate. It's like living by faith. I could see him look across the table at me with sort of a blank, like, what are you talking about? Not only that, he had a book that was open. As I said, I'm living by faith. He said, explain to me what that means. As I'm explaining, he shuts the book and he just leans back and crosses his arms. I was sitting there thinking, okay, this isn't going well. If you've ever done a deal with anybody, when somebody shuts their book and closes their arm, they seem so enthusiastic. And he looked across the table and he said, I'm sorry to say, but the bank needs to have some history of your employment. And I don't understand this living by faith. Unfortunately, we're going to have to deny giving you a loan. Now, I could have walked out of that place with the sense of what's going on? God, you called me and this doesn't seem right. And what's wrong with this banker? Or God, why are you doing this to me? And we can live in this season with that sense of why is this happening? Or we can start to say, why is this happening? It hasn't taken God by surprise, so we know God has a plan, and God didn't create it, but God can use it for our good. And I want to encourage you today to understand, church, it's a new day. Now, not only did I approach that bank, we made a decision when I walked out of that bank that day. I sat in the car with my wife and I said, we're going to go to new homes every Saturday and we're going to walk through by faith. It's important that you give God something to work with. So every weekend, 25 merchant banks and large banks later, we had every bank manager look at us in the same way and say, live by faith? What does that even mean? And today I want you to understand, whatever your circumstances may be, whatever you may have been through, whatever's happening in your business, in your employment, in your family, in your health today, I want to declare over you by faith, it's a new day, Victory. Come on, let's believe together in every campus, it's a new day. God is about to do something fresh, and let's look at what he's going to do. I'm going to read from the passage of scripture in Psalm chapter 5. where David put it like this in verse 3. In the morning, O Lord, you hear my voice. In the morning, I lay my requests before you. And I love this part. And I wait in expectation. Today, I want you to understand that it is a new day. It's a new morning. It's a fresh opportunity. And what are you going to do with it? Come on, let's walk through this passage together. The first thing that I want to highlight is a new day, or the morning, as it says. In the morning, O Lord, a fresh start. It's a fresh start. As of today, why don't you walk out of that room that you're in? Why don't you go for your exercise today? Why don't you, when you can go back to work, when we can start back at church? I'm believing with you, it may be small that we're going to start back, but we're going to believe, however small it may be, it's going to be something that is new, is fresh. God's going to breathe upon it. You see, the enemy will attack, and it's interesting how the enemy attacks. And the Bible talks about in the midnight hour. The midnight hour speaks of the darkest point of the night. The interesting part about 12 o'clock at night, 11:59, 12, 12:01, is they say it's the darkest time of the night. And so when he attacks at the midnight hour, when he attacks in the middle of coronavirus, in the middle of lockdown, in the middle of when we can't operate our business, we need to understand that at the very point that is the darkest point, the midnight hour is also the dawning of a new day. So he intensifies his attack when there's about to be a new day, a new beginning, something fresh about to start. So here we find ourselves, not just in an interesting year, not just in a dark year, not just in a difficult year, but we find ourselves in a place where it's the dawning of a new day, the turning of a new chapter, stepping into all that he has for us. So come on, Victory, let's rise with faith, not with fear. Let's not be crippled by what's been spoken, by words of man, but let's make the declarations of God. It's a new day. But you see, there's contention in that moment. There's always the greatest contention when you're about to have the greatest breakthrough. I believe that Singapore is about to come into its greatest days. But we need to understand at that point there's always contention. You know, when there's seasons that are changing, when two rivers come together, there's a thing called confluence. There's rough waters. But if you can stay in the boat through that season, once you get through and you come into that place that you were purposed to be, suddenly you're thrust forward. And I want to declare over you today, it's a new day. I want to ask you this question. Are you awake, church? Are you awake? Wake up. You've been woken from your slumber. It's a new day. It's a fresh start. God wants to do something in you today. But the second part of this verse says, in the morning, I lay my requests. I lay my requests. The Hebrew phrase, this is a Hebrew phrase, the I lay my requests. And it actually simply means to take careful aim so that the arrow will hit its mark. Take careful aim so the arrow will hit its mark. In other words, don't just pray random prayers. God, help me. God, would you come through? No. God, in my business, would you bring me contracts like I've never seen before? Lay my requests. God, in my health, I want that lump to go down. God, I want that cancer to be removed. We've got to be specific so that we're actually firing off arrows of prayer. We're firing off those requests with the intention that they are going to hit their mark. Victory 2021 is going to be your greatest year. We declare it, we pray it, we lay our requests before God. Victory, we believe that in the area of finance, both collectively for the church and you as an individual, that this is the year that we're going to have breakthrough like we've never seen. Even though in the natural it says things are going to go backwards, we're going to declare that this is the year that we're going to lay our requests, our specific requests, fire off that arrow, and next year, boom, it will hit its target. But you see, one of the things about a bow and arrow is every time, after a period of time of using it, you can actually, get out of calibration. So in other words, when you fire that arrow, you fire it off and it actually doesn't go where you target it to go because now the tension in the bow is out, something with the bow is wrong. So every now and again, and in a down season, in a down time when you're not actually hunting, as is talking about a bow and arrow, like many of us have had, we've had a season where we've had to sit on the sidelines. We've been in lockdowns, close downs, whatever they're called in different countries. But I want you to understand that this should have been and should be a season of recalibration. Getting you right back to the place where you are so that when you fire off your arrows, no longer do they just go off into the distance. No longer do we run aimlessly, as it says in the book of Corinthians. No, but we run with focus. We have that sense of aim that hits its target. Why? Because we've been recalibrated, we've been refreshed, we've been redefined in this season. Because it's a new day and we need to understand that we are ready for the next season to hit our mark. So my question is, how do you pray? Do you pray through the filter of fear? Do you pray through the filter of what's gone on in the past? Or do you look with a sense of declaration and a statement of what God has for your future? And dare to believe that he's going to come through for you. I want to stir you today, Victory, to understand that this is your day. Therefore, you need to lay your request with a fresh sense of purpose, with that sense of there's something fresh in the air. There's a new smell. There's a new scent that is coming. Why? Because it's a new day and God wants you to step into it. Faith is an action. So don't go into this season the way you did in the last. Without faith, it's impossible to please God, it says in Hebrews. We gave, in this season where we were believing for a house, I want to tell you, after 25 bank appointments and weeks of looking at the houses, and it got to the point where we were going back to the same houses because there wasn't any more to look at. And it was like, okay, God, when I spoke to you and I said I'm going to move the church and I'm going to plant this church and we're going to buy a house in the region, I didn't expect it was going to take this long. And there was a sense of turning away from, what the reality is or what God's word was or what my declaration was and stepping into a place of fear and becoming confused and becoming a sense of this has gone on a lot longer than I expected. God, why is this happening? But I want to remind you today that it's what you give God that actually is a trigger to him. In other words, we need to understand that in that season, Leonie and I, my wife, decided that we would actually give at a higher rate than we've ever given. But, to the banks, that was crazy because the banks are looking at your savings pattern. They're looking at your expenditure pattern. And when you're giving money away to a church, when you're giving money away to the kingdom, when you're giving money away by faith, it doesn't look good on the books. Hey, we haven't had much money. Some of us have had wages cut and some of us have had circumstance of life, but this isn't the season to pull back because without faith, which is an action, which is a substance of what we're hoping for, it's an actual something. We've got to give God something to work. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. Faith is an action. So church, I want to encourage you as I did in this season. What are you giving to God in this season? Are you giving of your finances? Maybe you need to be giving more. Maybe you need to be doing something by faith, triggering what you're believing for the future. It's a new day, so have a fresh approach. Maybe you need to be praying for other people. You got sickness in your body. I know at times now when I've been sick in my body, I will pray for others and I'll pray for them. And in part, I'm saying I'm sowing. And as I sow, I'll reap. I'm giving by faith out. Even though my own stocks, my own sense is depleted, I'm going to pray for healing for that person. And as I'm doing that, I'm giving God the substance. I'm giving him something to work with. I'm believing for a member of my family, so I'm going to speak to other people that I have access to that don't know God because I'm sowing a seed. Well, the same with our finances. Don't just keep giving at the same level you've been giving. Come on, this is a season of a new day. This is an exciting opportunity for us. So come on, let's begin to fire those arrows, believing we're going to hit our target. But we've got to give God the substance of something. It's a new day. Faith is a step. It's an action. And we've got to give it over to God. So we've learned that first and foremost, it's a new day, the dawning of a new day. It's a fresh morning. We've also understand that now I lay my requests, or I take careful aim so that the arrow will hit its mark. But I love this last part in the scripture that says, we wait in expectation. If the enemy's done anything in this season, he's taken that sense of expectation out of people. Will it ever happen? Will it ever be the same? What's going to happen when the borders open up? What's going to happen when the financial sector starts moving again? What's going to take place? But as people of faith, if we get this priority order right, if we understand who our God is, in the morning, O Lord. You see, we've got up, it's a new day. There's a sense of excitement, there's a sense of expectation. In the morning, O Lord, you hear my voice. He hears your voice. Church, did you hear that? He hears your voice. You haven't been a resounding gong. You are praying and he is hearing your voice. So the question is, are your prayers sharp? Are your prayers targeted? Are your prayers prayed with a sense of faith that you're going to hit the mark? Some of you may have prayed before we even got into this season, and now you're saying, how could that ever be? But God doesn't change. He's the same God yesterday, today, and forever. Just because a virus comes along, a pandemic, and the world seems to close down for a season, that doesn't change God. He's the same God, and he's going to come through for you. And so some of you need to stir up those prayers again with eager expectation, believing that he's going to come through for you. In Mark chapter 11 and verse 24, therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. Pastor Jeremy, I want to stir you as the leader of the church. Come on, start to pray audacious prayers. I know you have been, but even bigger, believing for buildings to be paid for, believing for finances to come in, believe for mission progress to change. I want you to start to pray audacious prayers as a church, believing that God is going to come through. And for you as an individual, whether you're in your room today, watching on Zoom, YouTube, Facebook, whatever else it might be, remember, he's the same God. And so I want to urge you to pray believing that you will receive it. He's a faithful God. He's going to come through. He's there for you. You know, one of the most profound scriptures is where we see Elijah. And he goes to the king and he says to the king, run ahead, a heavy rain is coming. But notice he had a declaration first. He put himself in that position where he spoke a word. And he said, a heavy rain is coming. A very specific arrow had gone out, a target. He laid his petitions before God. He put that out there. But then the Bible says he went and he sat on a rock and he began to pray. Sometimes this is like our lives. We're believing God. We're trusting God. We're full of faith. But then the testing period comes. And the Bible says, he says to his servant, I want you to go and check for me if you see anything. And he walks towards the coastline on a daily basis. Over this period of time, Elijah's on the rock praying. It says his hands are on his head is on his knees. So he's praying, he's travailing, he's asking God. But he keeps believing. The servant comes back once, nothing. Second time, nothing. Third time, fifth time, sixth time, seventh time. He comes back and he's probably almost embarrassed, like, I haven't got anything to report. But on the seventh time, he says, well, look, I saw a cloud the size of a man's fist. Now, think about this in context. A cloud the size of a man's fist in the sky is small, is a tiny sign. But who knows that when you've got expectation, when you're waiting with expectation, when you're believing that God's going to come through, when there's that sense of urgency in your spirit, there's that sense of even the smallest things becomes a sign. You know, a few years ago, we did a mission trip and we went to the nation of Papua New Guinea, a nation of about 8 million people. And Papua New Guinea is now a place that we've spent a lot of time. But when we first went, I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister of the nation saying, we want to come and partner with you for sustainable change in your nation. We're going to do large events in stadiums, which we've done, and saw hundreds of thousands of people come out over a couple of nights, which was incredible. 80,000 decisions for Christ on that one night alone. Now over 250,000 people have given their lives to Christ in the last 5 years. But I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister audaciously because we believe we could bring change to the nation. I lay my requests before you. And I wrote this letter and I said, could we meet you? I'm going to bring some business people and some pastors, and we want to talk about how we can partner with you to bring change to your nation. To my surprise, he agreed. I arrived in Papua New Guinea with these people, and we got into the four-wheel drive of somebody that had been gazetted to pick us up from the government, take us to our hotel. His name was Alf. And anyway, we were sitting in the car and we were having small talk, but I'm trying to be impressive to this government official because really I'd come on a word from God and I was operating in a sphere that I didn't have comfort of that time, dealing with the special, team around a government prime minister. I was a bit out of my depth. So I wanted to sound intelligent, and we were talking about where's the economy at, and where's the unemployment rate, and those sort of things. And then, I said, what's the greatest need in your nation right now? And he said, well, the greatest need right now here in Port Moresby, the capital, is rain. And before he'd even finished saying, I couldn't help myself because God had actually taken me to that country on the word right out of the book of Elijah here about a heavy rain is coming. Go and tell the king. That's why I felt I was going. I was so full of that expectation that right there in the car, I blurted out, I believe it's going to rain by the end of the day. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning. And it was one of those moments where I felt like, God, can I take those words back, because I've now got one day, it's defined, and it hadn't rained for over 18 months. And I'm like, oh my goodness, why did I say that? He looked across at me and goes, well, if you do that, that'll be your first miracle. And I was like, oh God, help me. But because I had expectation, there was something like, okay, God, you can do this. We went out that day and we looked at a few things. We were meeting the Prime Minister the next day. And we looked at a few things in their capital. And then we were at a cafe, an outdoor cafe, sitting outside. And suddenly as we were sitting there about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, there was a smell that came. And you know it well in Singapore because when it decides to rain, it rains. But it was that smell of, it's dry. There hasn't been anything in the atmosphere, but I can smell the rain. I turned to Alf and I said, is that rain I can smell? And he said, I don't think so. He said, it hasn't rained for 18 months. I don't think it's suddenly going to rain now. Well, I want to tell you, 30 minutes later, it started to rain. It didn't just rain, it poured hard like Singapore-style rain. And it rained and it rained and it rained for 2 hours. And then it didn't rain again for weeks afterwards. And I remember sitting there thinking, wow, God, you are faithful. Because I prayed a specific prayer, because I got a specific word. And without any exaggeration, today I'm still connected to this man who's not a Christian, who's opened many doors with the Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, the Health Minister. We've had great influence, souls saved, churches open. We now are building community centres in different parts of the country. Millions of dollars have been released. But it all started with a sense of expectation, a little thing like rain, a little thing like a cloud for Elijah. What's the little thing for you? Are you looking with expectation for a sign? Because I tell you, this is your breakthrough, breakout year. Singapore, start to believe that God's going to come through for you. God's about to do something in your midst. Don't look at the natural and go, well, it's all locked down. I tell you, it's just a precursor for what God is about to do. He's been setting you up for the next phase. So start to believe. Have eager expectation. Wait with expectation. Looking, God, where are you going to come through? God, I'm believing for you. God, I know that you can come through for us. I want to tell you, God is about to come through. So I go back to the story I started with. We wanted to build a house. We thought, surely God, you didn't move us to leave us stranded. We were renting for this 6-month period. And on this Saturday, as we did every Saturday, I was disheartened by this time, about 6 months in. 25 bank applications later, all rejected. I walk into a display home, a home that's been built to show you what could be. And you would have a display suite there in some of those apartments. But this home, I walk in, and it's the one that my wife and I had gone, this is what we really want. And we've been back there many times, but I'm walking through now and my expectation levels have died a bit. But I walk into the house and the real estate agent, the salesman, is standing there and he says, "Hi, you're back again." It's like, when he knows who you are because you've been back many times. That's not a good thing. One, from a sales point of view, he knows you like the place. So he asked me this question: what is holding you back from buying this place? I said, I don't even want to talk about it. He goes, "Just tell me." And I told him the story. He goes, "I think I can help you." I didn't get full of expectation, church. I didn't go, "Yes, somebody can help me." This is a real estate agent, not a banker. He goes, "I've got a friend who's in a merchant bank. Maybe he can help you. I'll contact him, give him the details, and he'll give you a call." I said, "Sure." So, I've now got a little bit of expectation. On the Monday night, that was the Saturday, he rings me. He says to me, "Neil, I've gone through your application and I need a few more details." I tell him even the bit by faith. He goes, "I think I can help you. I think we can do this." A few days later, he rings me back. He goes, "Yes, we can approve a loan for you." There's this expectation now starting to build. I'm like, wow, this is happening. This is unbelievable. But when something's taken a long time, like this season we've been going through, you have a sense of, is it really going to happen? But I want to tell you, God is faithful. We go through the process. It's 1 week before we're going to exchange the money. It's going to go into our account. We're going to be able to purchase and build the property. And I get a phone call from that same bank manager. He goes, "Hey, I just wanted to ring you. There's a bit of a complication with your loan." And who knows, when you've been through a process, you're not waiting with expectation. Sometimes you're waiting with what's going to go wrong. And I was like, I knew something was going to go wrong. And he goes, no, wait. It's all good. He says, "We've been bought out by one of the big banks." And he says, "So what that means is, rather than write up all the documentation in our bank name, we're going to have to write it up in your bank's, in this big bank's name. And they've guaranteed us that they're going to underwrite all our loans that we've written, so you're going to be okay." Now, I asked him this question as he was telling me. I said, "Which bank is it?" He told me it was the ANZ Bank, Australian New Zealand Bank. I said, "That's amazing." You know why it's amazing? Because the first bank, and the bank that I'd been with for 10 years prior to that time, the first bank that I applied to, the bank manager that I knew well, guess who he was? He was the ANZ bank manager. And it was like God was saying, circumstances may change, banking systems may change, but if you give me a little, remember I gave more in that season than I'd ever given. I, by faith, kept walking into homes saying, "God, I take this ground," because I had a sense that it was a new day. I had a sense that it was a new season and God was going to walk through and with us in that season. It's a new day, Victory. You need to understand that you can have expectation. Why? Because you lay your request before God. You fire off your arrows with a sense of certainty they're going to hit their targets. And I want to tell you, I lived in that house for the 10 years that we planted that church, and God was faithful to us, but you don't get the story unless you're prepared to have the change of mindset and declare over your life, it's a new day. Now, whatever room you might be in there today, you might be in your lounge room, you might be with some of your family members, you might be watching from your car or a bedroom, or today you might be just listening to the audio. But if you can, if you're not driving, would you just stop for a moment? Come on, this is church, Victory. We got to get used to responding again. We got to get used to standing again. We got to get used to lifting our hands, not just making dinner or a cup of coffee while we're watching church. Don't forgo the gathering of the saints of God. Don't hold back in this season. Yes, it's been a season that's been different, but it's not the season that's purpose for us. So right now, would you join with me and stand wherever you are? You got people next to you, that's okay. If you haven't got anybody next to you, nothing to be worried about. But come on, Victory. Let's receive from Holy Spirit right now. I want you to lift your hands wherever you are, because I want to prophesy over you. I want to declare over you personally. I want to declare over Victory Church. I want to declare over the network of churches throughout the world. It's a new day. Oh, you can have expectation. You can have a belief that God's going to come through for you. And today, I'm believing with you that something is going to shift. But right now, as you go, yes, God, it's a new day, there's a sense of faith coming into your spirit, a sense of faith coming into your bones. I want you to now make those declarations. I lay my requests. I shoot my arrow, believing they're going to hit their target. Because 2020, 2021 is going to be different. From this day on, you're not going to sit back with fear. What's happening? Why is it happening? You're going to sit with a sense of expectation. Like Elijah on that rock, and his servant comes back the seventh time and he says, I see a cloud the size of a man's hand. Elijah jumps to his feet and he says, go and tell the Pharaoh to run ahead. A heavy rain is coming. And a rain came and touched that dry and parched land. The drought was over. And I want to tell you, I declare the drought is over in your life. I declare that if it's in the area of finance, that you would give God something to work with. If it's in the area of healing, that God would come through for you. But it feels like there's contention in the atmosphere. There is, because it's the dawning of a new day. It's very short distance between 11:59 at night and 12:01. But the difference is you moved away from the darkest point of the night to the dawning of a new day. It's fresh, it's new, it's a new day. God, I pray for each and every person right across the network of Victory. The Lord, you would touch people. You would give them hope. You would give them a purpose. You would give them a sense of confidence that today they can have expectation because it's a new day in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. Come on, why don't you give the Lord a great hand? Fantastic, fantastic. So glad that I've been able to be with you today. Thank you for the privilege, Pastor Jeremy.